G'day, I'm Mark from Self-Sufficient Me, and in these, it's the new normal times, you don't have to become a rampant prepper or fight the crowd for hours like some apocalyptic nightmare. In this video, I'm going to give you my 7 top tips on how to survive panic buying in a pandemic. Let's get into it. Tip number 1, grow your own food. Of course this would be my first tip, and it makes sense because the more food you grow, the less you need to rely on someone else to grow it for you, and the less time you spend at the shops fighting over the last packet of frozen peas. I grew these myself. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Mark, who cut your hair? No, you're probably not thinking that. No, you're thinking, Mark, you can't grow toilet paper. Maybe you can. Sure, in a perfect world, to grow and make everything we consume would be ideal, but it's not practical for most people. And even we buy fresh produce from the supermarket from time to time, such as during our hot summer, when certain crops that we like to eat are harder to grow in our area. So it's all about, being as self-sufficient as possible, or being self-sufficient in something, and that can help dramatically to limiting your exposure or frustrations trying to source supplies. Tip number 2, shop in pairs. If you do need to fight the public quagmire with people panicking all over the place, then a good way to shop is in pairs like a team. And you do this by one person holding ground or holding the line, whilst the other person acts as the hunter and gatherer, finding what you require and bringing them safely back to the trolley. This technique is highly effective because it allows the hunter and gatherer freedom and maneuverability to dodge in and out of the crowd, grabbing what they need and being the first to that last packet of dunny paper without being slowed down by a trolley in an already packed supermarket aisle. Meanwhile, the other person joins the queue, and by the time they reach the checkout, the hunter and gatherer in the team has procured all the items required, thus limiting the waiting time significantly. But Mark, I don't have a partner or someone else I can team up with at the shops. What can I do? Easy. Use an invisible person to hold the trolley in line for you. No one will question it. Tip number 3, buy or grow staples. By staple, I mean food that can be stored for a long time, makes the base of a normal diet, and can be used to make other foods. For example, flour can be used to make bread, and it keeps in the pantry for a long time. So does rice, potatoes, and dried corn. These types of essential items should be first on your list, and in fact, maintaining a sizable amount of staple foods in the pantry is a good idea, especially if a sudden lockdown causing panic buying happens, because most retailers will introduce limitations on how much you can buy. So if you already have a decent amount and can only buy a limited amount, you're just topping up what you already have in the pantry anyway. Tip number 4, get a bigger pantry. The bigger the pantry, the more food you can keep. You know, it amuses me. Those tiny house people, you know the trend at the moment, trying to find the smallest dog box you can to live in, and then they come up with, hey, I'm building an underground cellar to complement my tiny house. Wasn't it big enough then? Now I have to admit, a bigger pantry is something that I wish I had also. We've got preserved food all over the place, and it's not ideal. Who needs a formal dining room these days? That's so 1960s. Nina and I are keen to one day convert our dining room that we never use into a butler's pantry, so we have somewhere with the space to finally store our staples, extra food, and preserves. Tip number 5, preserve more. Always preserve. any glut of food you have, either through dehydration, salting, canning, fermenting, etc. You never know when a glut of fruit or veg will come in handy. Plus, preserved food can often improve the taste or create something different to excite the palate instead of eating the same stuff, especially during lockdown when variety soon becomes king. Preserving food is mostly a safe process and generally easy to do, so don't think you need to be a food scientist or trained chef to make tasty treats for you and the family to enjoy over that extended period of isolation imposed by our masters in government and cheered on by the corporate media. Tip number 6, keep chickens, for two main reasons. Firstly, chickens lay eggs, and eggs would have to be one of the most useful foods God ever invented. They can be used to make sweets, savouries, sauces, and so much more. Secondly, chickens can be put to work. So at a time when you might not be allowed to work, your chickens can be keeping the pests down, making compost or fertiliser for the garden. Chickens don't eat much. They can be kept in relatively small spaces. They're not very noisy. So keep a COVID chicken and skip the supermarket caged eggs for good. Tip number 7, grow flavour enhancers. This is something I've urged people to do plenty of times before, and I'll say it again. Growing spices and herbs is one of the easiest ways to make a bland dish into a tasty meal. And lucky for us, most herbs and spices are easy to grow. In tip number 3, I talked about staples. Not staplers, staples. And the truth is, things like potatoes and rice can be pretty bland to eat. Add some basil, verbena, bay leaf, dill, fennel, or other herbs, and suddenly you go from bland to yum. Same goes for chilies, turmeric, ginger, galangal, or other easy to grow spices. These ingredients not only add flavour, they add healthy antioxidants and vitamins to your food. And when you're in lockdown and unable to live a normal life or go to the doctor to get a health check, it's more important than ever that we eat food high in antioxidants and vitamins. Anyway, do you have a tip for surviving a panic buying pandemic? If you do, whack it down in the comments section below so we can all learn from it. And make sure you give this video, if you liked it, a big panicked thumbs up. And subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.